Hello, everybody. Welcome to Furuya Uncorked. Joining us is Cully and our special guest, Mike Weber, who's the Director of Operations for the Roy's Restaurants in Hawaii. Before that, when I met him, he was at the Lodge Quelly on the island of Lanai. He was a captain in the formal dining room, and he worked in both hotels, Manele Bay and Lodge Quelly. He was with the Merriman's Restaurant Group, and he's been with Roy's for a super long time. I might have skipped something here and there, but
he's also Gerard Butler's stunt double.
He's the double stunt.
I'm not.
And, I just think he has a lot to share. He's been around here in the islands, Lanai, Big Island, Maui, Honolulu, and he's done things on Kauai. So I think he's in touch with what's happening here in the local wine scene, and he's been around doing it. And he's been hanging around with all the top sommeliers in Hawaii for all these years. So I think he has a lot of wisdom, a lot of insights, a lot of experiences to share. So, Michael, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excited to be here today.
Super stoked.
Yeah.
And Cully, how did you meet him?
The first time that I remember meeting Uncle Mike Weber is when you used to have to go to Maui all the time, and we stayed at your apartment.
Right. I don't think that was me, Cully.
It was you.
Yeah.
Was it?
You let us stay at your apartment for a little bit.
The
In
first
Kahana.
time. That's my apartment. The first time I remember meeting you was before that. We were playing football up in your street in Hawaii Kai, out on the road, and your dad was he was coaching you on a proper throw, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, Cully, don't throw it like him." He's pretty rude.
But he was at Cuisines of the Sun
a few times. Yeah.
So,
pretty young.
I'd forgotten you'd stayed at my apartment.
Yeah.
I thought we'd start off by just
place.
doing a blind tasting, a wine of the week.
Okay.
Blind tasting. And again, for you viewers, we're not asking Mike or Cully to guess the grape variety, the soil, the vintage, the producer. That's not what this blind tasting is about. It's just so that you can see a methodology that Mike has, and you've already seen what Cully does, and then it helps you to think about how to develop a methodology for yourself in tasting and breaking down a wine so you remember it, so you establish lingo, so when you go to a store or a restaurant, you can better describe what you're looking for. That's the intent of this thing. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead and take charge of this one? We have a red wine, by the way, just as a hint.
All right, thank you. It's a good start. I'm just, for my purposes right now, not working as a sommelier. I'm not typically that interested in color, other than maybe looking for some age in the wine. But typically that's not where I'm going. I'm just kind of interested in deciding whether the wine tastes good to me for the most part.
Very practical.
Yeah, that's true. And right away for me, I just want to smell it. Kind of think about what I smell, and I kind of think about this in modern winemaking or maybe older winemaking as far as what I smell first. And this smells fruity, but mostly earthy to me, I think. Darker fruit maybe, and some earth. I think the wine has great concentration of fruit. I really, in the front of my mouth, I taste that concentration. Good intensity, and it flows really nicely across my palate. To me, this is a delicious wine. The finish is long and unbitter. So for me, I would keep drinking it.
So let me ask you a question. Would you think this thing is more fruit-driven, cherries, blackberries, plum, etc., or do you think it's earth-driven?
For me, it doesn't stand out strongly either way. It's just really kind of a balanced wine that has good fruit and good earth. It reminds me of either an old world wine or someone in the new world that kind of likes that style of wine.
Okay, and you enjoy wine at home.
I do.
And with dinner, I know you sent me an email or text what you were doing for Thanksgiving and what kind of wines you were having. So what kind of food would you imagine having this wine with?
All right. So this is, for me, certainly we roast a lot of chicken at my place on the grill. And, I love that with this. I also would enjoy that with, we also do a lot of New York steaks from Costco. And so
Something a little less fat to it.
I'd appreciate that with that too.
That's good. Yeah.
Salmon even. This is for me kind of an across the board kind of a wine.
And how much would you consider paying for this wine in a store?
This to me tastes like a $40 wine in the store.
Yeah. How about for you, Cully?
I mean, knowing you, it's probably around there, between $32 and $38 a bottle, I would say.
Okay, and what kind of foods would you imagine with this?
I mean, I'm pretty new to that scene, but what Mike said was good to me. I mean, I there is some tannin to it, so I could see it with a steak with a little less fat to it.
So you work at Buzz's Steakhouse in Lanai. So what on the menu would you think about
Either
recommending this wine?
top sirloin or New York steak.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And do you agree with him? You think it's delicious and it flows well? And
I do. I like it. It's dry to medium dry. Yeah, there is a little oak to it.
it's old oak, it's not new oak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So Ariana, can you hand us the bottle? Thank you. So this is a wine that's called Cannel Sardinia.
Oh, wow.
And the name of the winery, and it's a Reserva, which means one more year in large barrels, super large barrels. And this is Sella Masca. Okay, so this is from the island of Sardinia. The grape variety is Cannel. There they say Cannel is Grenache. I believe it's slightly different. I don't have Grenache that tastes like this, but they say it's Grenache. And a lot of them say this is where Grenache originated from, was the island of Sardinia. I don't necessarily know either way, but I find it hard to believe when you consider Spain and Italy and France are involved, where vineyards were planted by the Romans way back when.
How much is that wine in the store, Chuck?
I bought this at Tamura's on Wailea and Kaimuki, and I paid 14 something a bottle.
14. Wow, this wine is so good.
I saw it at Fujioka's for 14 something a bottle. I saw it at Arfield Kailua, 14 something a bottle too, I believe.
Wow.
We better get some before this thing gets out there.
And so I just want to share with you.
Let's go now.
So Cannel de Sardinia is the appellation. So this would be more of a country style Cannel de Sardinia, not a trophy style.
Mm.
The ones that I carry at Vino are more trophy, and they're 4 times the price.
Wow.
Right.
They're really like guns.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, Giovanni Montici is like a gun.
But I love this wine.
Yeah,
This
and
wine
so
is, to me,
For $15.
and in the island, it's not super highly regarded like Montici or some of these other guys. But again, this is meant to be gulped at a cafe or bistro, not fawned over, not put in your wine cellar. I think this wine is absolutely delicious.
I mean, during the blind tasting itself, I almost finished my glass, so that's a good sign,
Here,
that's a
have
good
some more.
sign. I got you.
Thank you.
So again, the island of Sardinia, the grape variety is Cannel, Sella Masca. And I think this wine, I just go to all these stores, Mike, and I just look for wines. I buy them so that way I can choose whatever I want, and then try to look for wines of value. That's the most important thing, so that
I agree.
we can get the viewers, to try some of these wines that they may not have. And because you said chicken and because you said New York on the grill and chicken on the grill, they're going to do that. I also would say pizzas, meatloaf, things like that.
Yeah.
Light red pastas. I think this would be a really interesting wine. Okay.
I like that blind tasting. Like what you were saying off camera, it was a different approach than like it's a very practical approach to a blind tasting.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's why every person that comes on, I ask them to break down a wine because we all have different ways of doing things, and wines are very subjective. If Mike said, no, this wine isn't good, that's cool. I just wouldn't have shown the label, because I don't want it to be negative, but at the same time, I don't want everybody to think that we're just putting on wines that are good. I just saw it at a store shelf. I bought it, brought it here,
And what do you think of this wine?
I love it. We did it by the glass a lot at Vino. It's not when you go to the island, it's not a super highly respected wine, but I don't care. It's so darn delicious to me, and it's just so food friendly. You could do it with so many things, like our octopus, the Spanish octopus, the grilled Spanish octopus. This would be perfect with that, I mean, even our Tuscan chicken, I think this would be perfect with that, and so it's a very food-friendly wine, in my opinion, and it's also very delicious. And I think it's very important for you, the viewers, if you go out and find this wine, that you also serve it. Stick it in your refrigerator for about 8 minutes before you serve it. This wine is cool at the right temperature. That's when the wine is really at its most deliciousness state. I just think it's just wonderful at this temperature. Okay, so Mike, do you remember when you first met me?
I do. 1996.
Wow.
1996.
At Coele?
Yep, you were over for I don't remember the specifics about your visit, but you were coming over pretty regularly to do that guest artist program there at Coeli. We were bringing in all these amazing chefs at the time, and at that, it was all new to me. I wasn't really kind of aware of who these people were, so it was a bunch of discovery time for me. Really awesome. But I met your dad doing the wine program, and there were guests like Jean-Louis Paladin, Thomas Keller.
Wow.
Thomas Keller from the
At
French
Coeli
Laundry.
Lodge?
Yeah.
That hotel
Charlie
was
Trotter.
so beautiful.
Charlie Trotter, Emerald
Wow.
Lagasse,
Yeah, I wasn't there for Emerald.
Just a special guest
Nobu
for dinners?
Matsuhisa. I mean, we had a lot of star chefs up there. That was Kurt Matsumoto, and that was Paul Horner.
Yeah,
he
Paul
worked
Horner.
for Paul Horner.
Yeah, I remember you
I
telling
love
me
that guy. What a man. Holy moly.
That is a guy. I wish he's in Arizona now.
So Paul
otherwise-
Horner, for everybody listening, was the GM of Coeli Lodge at this
and
time.
and one time he was the GM of Manelli as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy, too. What a just heart and soul guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And his coined phrase is "I like retire."
He looked like
Yeah,
he
I
looked
love
like a
it.
Hawaiian version of Brian Dennehy.
He
Big
totally
guy,
did.
6'3", 6'4", big Hawaiian man, full of character, full of his handshake was enough. You don't have to have a contract, you don't have to have anything. If he told you yes, it was yes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So you had been working in hotels for a while up until that point.
Freestanding restaurant. So Logic Coeli was my first hotel that I'd ever worked at, and had an amazing experience. Felt so lucky that I ended up there. Meeting your dad, a big part of that for sure. Those guest chefs, and also early on getting a chance to, your dad got in my ear about perspective, right? What are you thinking about? What's important here? Why do you think that? And that kind of conversation I enjoyed for probably the next 10, 12, 15 years. We don't do it too much anymore, but we should do some more. I could probably use some more perspective from you, Jack.
No, I could use more.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'll call you.
So what's an example of that? Like,
Well, I see it now with what I do for work a lot is, there's a lot of great qualities to like youthful energy and going to attack. But when you've been around for a while, you have some insight, right?
Yeah.
And you have some things, you've seen things before. And your dad had been around, and I hadn't, and so you tend to, you could easily get focused on the wrong thing sometimes, right? Or maybe not the wrong thing, but maybe not the most impactful thing to be focused on, and the most effective thing to be focused on. And someone gets in your ear a little bit and says, "Hey, what about that? Did you ever think about that? Oh, I hadn't thought about that." Super impactful to me.
Excuse me. So coming
Your dad's getting choked up. Out there.
coming from California, right? You came from California, is that
Yes,
why?
I came to California.
So, and then the early years working with Cuisines of the Sun and other events that we did, and being exposed to the local talent here, people like Mark Shishito, people who've been on our podcast already, Mark Shishito, Kevin Toyama, people like that.
Yeah.
Let
Let me start with Kevin. Let me just talk about Kevin real quick. And, I've got some things to say about Mark, but Kevin was living on Lanai when I lived there.
Oh, that's right.
And so I got introduced to him through your dad, through Chuck, and spent some time. Your dad would come in for a weekend and we'd do some wine tastings and he'd do some classes. But I was in a tasting club with Kevin, or a tasting group with Kevin, and we'd get together and he taught me about blind tasting wine. So I'm probably gonna get a phone call after he saw my presentation of that tasting of that wine right there with lots of scoldings. But Kevin was really impactful to me early on too. With he's like a laser, right? That guy is so intense and has just focus. And one of the things that I love about Kevin though too is he's his own man, right? He has his own way of thinking things and about things, and his own way of what he thinks, and he's gonna stick to that.
and he owns it too.
Yeah, absolutely. He's it's amazing. Your dad mentioned Mark too, and we were talking about Mark a little bit earlier, but Mark came kind of later in my career here in Hawaii, and when I think about Mark, I think of grace. I think of the gentleman in the room, always the guy you look up to that says he's going to handle it the right way. So I have a lot of respect for both
Hospitality
those
driven.
guys. Yeah.
And also, both of them are pretty good wine tasters on top of that too.
Well, yeah. I aspire to be one of the wine tasters of either one of those. Actually,
Did you
I
ever
don't even
take
try anymore.
any of the SOM tests?
I have a
Exams?
certification from the Master's Master of Sommeliers for the initial certification.
Yeah.
So when we were on Lanai, I don't know if you remember, but we used to have a lot of after dinner tastings and hang out and talk story sessions
Yeah.
on the Lanai that circled.
Yeah.
On the island of Lanai, on the Lanai at Koeli Lodge.
Yeah.
And we would sit there and smoke cigars or taste wines together. I would bring over wines
Yeah.
to share with them because naturally, the younger generation of people over there were into the Napa Valleys and the Cabernet Sauvignons, Turley Zinfandel, things like that. And then I wanted to show them other horizons to explore. So we would taste and everything. Do you remember those?
Yeah, absolutely. It was we weren't able to do that very often, hang out at the hotel and have wine. But they made exceptions when Chuck was in town or this guest artist program was in town because they felt like it was a great learning opportunity. And it was just really nice. It was really a privilege, and I felt pretty honored to be able to do that kind of thing. It's a beautiful hotel.
That is the most beautiful hotel to me.
Was.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
So what was a aha moment? I mean, what was one of those aha, that was aha to you that you just sat there going, wow, I think differently now?
Well, I'd say, if I think about it right now, there's kind of three big things that happened to me. One was my parents, when I was 21 years old, invited me or took me for my birthday to a winemaker's dinner in Southern California. It was Sanford. The winemaker was
Bruno.
Yeah. And that's the first time as a kid, my parents drank wine at home, but wasn't, kind of focused on different varietals with different food and that type of thing. So it was really kind of a eye-opening experience. And also it kind of clicked something in my head that made me think, hey, I like this. I really like this. And also that I fell in love with Pinot Noir that night too. The perfume of Pinot Noir just kind of loved it ever since. That kind of, got me really intrigued by wine. And then meeting you, Chuck, really was like in the second turning point for me. And, how to just think about wine differently and, the giant world of wine that's out there, how many different varietals are actually out there to try. And you also turned me on to the third thing for me, and that was reading On the Wine Route by Kermit Lynch. Those three things right there really are kind of the big, where I am still to this day, kind of how I look at things.
And then what about operations-wise? You started off in the trenches and you worked your way up. You were...
Well, best way, right?
I know, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that's me too. But how do I communicate that to Cully? He's now a bartender at Buzz's Lanikai, and then Ariana, started off as a bar back from Mark Suchita and Alan Wong's.
Yeah.
So now that you are the director of operations, you're at the head of the operational food chain. What kind of insight would you give Cully and Ariana about
From your experience
Yeah.
of working in the trenches to where you are now?
Well, when you're in the trenches, you don't want to be there, right? It's just, you want to be out of the trenches. You're like, that's the last place that I want to be right now is down here in the trenches. I want to be somewhere else where I'm making some decisions or, doing the fun stuff. But the thing that gets you is it gets you later on. It buys you, you know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
You were there. It gives you confidence in decision making. It provides you, an authentic perspective that came from, hours of hard work in a maybe not awesome place all the time, right? You put the work in, and so it provides you something for sure. It gives you something that that you will find very valuable later.
So him talking about you working in the trenches from the ground up, what was your first job in the restaurant industry or in the hospitality industry?
Busboy. Working as a busser, working hard, sweating away, and then working up from there. That working up and then realizing that you want to work at a better caliber of place and then go back down to the bottom and work your way up. Same thing. When I went to Koeli, I'd done some managing, but I wasn't hired as a dining room captain. Paul hired me as like the cafe server, and I was happy to have that job, very happy. But kind of starting, low on the totem pole again. But it gives you, it provides you something. It gives you some perspective on hard work, and also it makes it easier for you later on to ask someone to say, hey, look, this is how you kind of earn it, right? You start here and you do it. And if you do it good, you'll have an opportunity.
And as you go up the ladder too, I think it elevates your awareness of what's going on the dining room floor, as far as seeing the door and what needs help at the door, walking through the dining room and helping to bus or...
You know it. You're absolutely right. And then, if you've done it, you know it. You know what it takes.
So the question I have for you now that you manage, how many Roy's restaurants are there in Hawaii now?
Well, there's 10 Roy Yamaguchi restaurants.
Yes.
So I'm involved with 10 different restaurants.
Okay. So you have X amount of general managers, X amount of managers, X amount of chefs, X amount of sous chefs,
Yep.
X amount of bartenders, X amount of employees. So, I see with especially the young eager beavers, so they go up and they polish glasses, because that's what's required of them. But they don't really get into polishing glasses.
Right.
And so they've only learned so much in the trenches. They didn't take advantage of the full thing. And then they get a little bit of, not cocky, but a little bit of confidence.
Right.
So they become a waiter, then they do it. But their comfort zone is being a busser. They really don't learn fully being a server. And same thing when you keep moving up or going to bartender. And if you've been doing the bartender job for 3 years, you think you got it wired, but you're not really performing at even a 75% efficiency level in a lot of cases, right? So how do you nurture that along? How do you encourage, what can you tell Cully or Ariana, about making sure that they complete and fulfill that task as a food runner, as a busser, as they move up the ladder, so that their base is super strong?
Right.
Because you never want to go back.
Well, when I can remember hearing from people who had some life experience when they were talking to me and saying, "Hey, take your time. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You don't have to rush things." Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
I just want it now. I want it all right now. I can do it. I'm smart. Sometimes you're the smartest person in the room potentially, right? I can study harder. I can do it all. And you don't see the value in that. You're like, hey, I want to go solve those decisions. I want to solve those problems and make those decisions. But there is value to that, to getting really good at it one step at a time. Because later on, it's going to come back and benefit you.
Well, and I think getting good at it with actual intent of not just being like, oh, I'm just buying my time to move on.
Right.
To
mastering your craft.
Yeah.
Right? Oh.
Well, I think the point of the story that made me think about this topic was Mike said that, he started here and he worked his way up and and then he went to another restaurant and started fine dining restaurant, and then he had to start at the bottom again. I think when you start at the bottom, a lot of people will sit there going, I'm above that. I was a manager at the other place. And the thing that I think everybody needs to understand is that, you may have done this in Ariana's case at Alan Wong's, or in Mike's case at Roy's. But when you work at Vino, it doesn't matter what you did over there, because you're at Vino now. And Vino's intent is to make sure that every customer gets the same service no matter whose station they sit in. So if this server did it Alan Wong's way, and this server did it Roy's way, and this server did it Halekulani's way, they're getting different styles of service. So I think you have to, when you go to a new restaurant and you start off at the bottom, I think that's really good because it gives you the core of how they do it, the understanding, the thought process and whatnot, plus credibility amongst your fellow workers.
Right, super important.
Yeah.
But you got to approach it like that. You got to approach it like you're starting over and you want to be the best polished glasser, the best busboy, the best host, whatever job you have. And so that should you open your own restaurant, you could set up each of those positions better than any place you worked at before. That's how good you have to be at each of those. If you just look at it as a stepping stone to get to the next thing, you're cutting yourself short, in my opinion. Yep.
Yep, I agree. And but the hard part, I think, is that you can't. No one buys that, right? You just don't believe it.
Well,
I'm not willing to do it.
Yeah.
But
if they hear it from Mark Suchita and Kevin Toyama and you and so and so and so and so, hopefully they'll think, well, maybe there's something to this.
Maybe they'll just dislike it less when they have to do it anyway, right?
And everyone has their own timeline of when they're ready to hear something like that, too, right?
Right.
Like a lot about the service industry is, you don't really realize that this is your career until it's your career.
Right.
It's you never really go into it as like, oh, I'm gonna do this forever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's true.
What was the first year that you participated in Cuisines of the Sun?
99, I think.
And what was an aha?
The sheer amount of glasses that needed polishing was pretty aha to me.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah.
We'd have to polish over those 4 days, 11,000, 15,000 glasses?
I wanted your job. I wasn't willing to work in the trenches. I wanted to get up there with you and make decisions. I didn't want to polish those glasses for 8 hours a day.
It's Polish, by the way.
8 hours a day polishing glasses?
It felt like it. It was probably pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, it was at least 6, I'm sure.
And we had 15 sommeliers polishing.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Holy shit.
And like Dwayne Kawamoto from Neiman Marcus, and who was with him? It was him and somebody else were in charge of washing the glasses. So you had to go to the dishwasher because like at Vino we
Tom.
had. Maybe it was Tom. Yeah, maybe it was Tom.
Tom who?
Alejandro. So, at Vino we have our own glass washer separate. There's no food grease or oils, right? It's separate for the wine glasses. So at Cuisines we'd have to wait for the kitchen to wash all their dishes and everything like that, and then Dwayne and Tom would have to go in there, change the water, empty the grease the grease trap, whatever. The
Food trap.
Yeah, food trap and all that stuff, and run it a few times to clear the system, and then wash it through with soap, rinse solution, disinfectant, and then rerun it again with hot water only. And then they would bring
the
it to
machine the whole time.
and then they would bring it to the room, and then the whole gang would be sitting there polishing the glasses after that, hand polishing all the glasses. Wow. So it's just constant cycle. Then they would be saran wrapped, so we knew what was. And I think it was Dwayne Kawamoto and Tom were in charge of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Where for you was your job where you realized that polishing glasses was so important?
Where was I? Working with Nuncio. All those years. That's why.
And he had the mindset that it was that important already to him.
I think so. Yeah. I just think that that's something that's overlooked. Is polishing glass. Making sure that I think that's a fundamental that if you're going to be a sommelier, if you're going to be really dedicated to your craft, that's an important fundamental.
Do you even polish these tasting glasses at home?
Of course I do.
They look polished.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. We were out having dinner in my backyard, my girlfriend and I, and she took a photo of, she had this candle on the table and the glass of wine I was drinking, and she set it up and took it, and she posted that picture, and I was like, oh God, that glass is so unpolished. Right? I was mortified.
That he was going to see it, or that someone
just said,
So besides washing the glasses, then I put it inside the dishwasher. We have a dishwasher now. We never had one. And I let it do the rinse cycle with just hot water only. Like it takes like an hour and 30 minutes, just hot water, and just steeps in there, to make sure it's disinfected and it's clean of all chemicals and all things. It's very important to me. It's just a detail. Yeah. And then Kevin Toyama and Mark Shishido were in another room, and they were in charge of wrapping the bottles in cellophane and making sure that we served the wines at the right temperature, that we had all the set. So in other words, when we finished night one, those wines were then put in a different place because they're POW. And then we would stage the second day's wines, and he would have it all organized. Mark and Kevin, they would have it always organized. And then they would wrap the bottles, and then when it came time, they cut the capsules, everything. When it came time, pop the cork, get it down to temperature.
Can you explain to the viewer what wrapping the bottle in cellophane does and when it's important to do that?
You're going to put it in ice. It's just going to protect the label. When you're presenting it to the guests, the label will still look pristine and not damaged by the ice or waterlogged.
It's just an exercise just to, first of all, it's to put on, Cuisines in the Sun every year had 12 to 15 of the top chefs in the world. So we always wanted to put, like what Ariana and Ramel, all these people talk about, is we wanted to make sure that we did Hawaii justice, that we did ourselves proud. You know what I'm saying? And then the second thing, with all those world-class chefs, so they saw what we're doing. But then the other thing that was at least equally as important, if not more important for me personally, was that we as a community, as a sommelier community, we understood the standards of what being a sommelier was. So if Mark Shishido or Mike Weber or whoever's going to do an event, you don't have to worry when you walk in the door. You don't have to worry about the glasses. You don't have to worry about the temperature. You don't have to worry about things. It set a standard for all of us, And so the point I'm trying to say on that is, again, I think I said this on a previous podcast, but when I was in Corsica, one of the most famous winemakers talked about another winemaker, and he called him a vigneron. Vigneron, vigneron, vigneron. So if you look it up in a French dictionary, you look up vigneron, it says winemaker, wine grower, something like that. And it's accurate. But to him, it meant something different. And the best way I can explain it to you is like saying samurai. Samurai doesn't mean just a swordsman. It's a culture. It's
Way
a
of life.
code.
Yeah.
It's a way of life. And so same thing with sommelier. That's what this thing reminded me of. I could not see Mike in 15 years or Mark Suchita in 15 years, but I know what their standards are going to be, just because we have that mutual respect. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was the most, what's the word? Most invigorating thing for me with Cuisines of Sun is all of us. And plus that while we're polishing glasses, we'd all bring wine. I brought a bunch of wines, but everybody would bring
There was
bottles of
drinking.
wine. But we would blind taste and
was
discuss
fun.
about each of the wines. And there would be at least 4 winemakers in there and a lot of chefs. It became the room. It was called the room, and it was happening every night.
And your uncle Randy Chang would make the martinis, I think, typically.
Was he a martini drinker?
Oh man, he was up there cutting hamachi in his room with a wine key, and Mark Suchita was eating ice cream at 2:00 in the morning. These guys are too
Your
much.
dad always let me room with Randy because he was the most fun, for sure. There's no question that. Kevin is one end of the spectrum. Randy's the other end of the spectrum.
They both used to work together.
Oh, my gosh.
Randy used to be the wine cellar master at Halekulani before Kevin. But Kevin was a sommelier, so they worked together for a while. They overlapped for a while, but it's just so funny because they're so different.
Yeah, they sure are. Both awesome.
Yeah.
Mike,
In
what
their
was
own
what
ways.
was a wine that
Miss
you
Randy.
had that stood out in your mind over time? I'm not talking about the most expensive. I'm not talking about the hardest to get or anything. Something
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you about an experience since we're talking about Cuisines of the Sun right now. It's standing out for me right now, and this involves someone else that isn't with us anymore. But we were back in the room one night after polishing and tasting some more wine blind, and I'm pretty new to the, I'm definitely a newcomer, and learning, a lot. But we're blind tasting, and Jason Panui,
why?
he smells that wine. He says, "Are we in Spain right now?" And I'm thinking to myself, how in the heck do you do that? Because there was a Spanish wine. I don't even remember that. I don't remember what it was particularly, but and I just thought to myself, yeah, one day I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to identify a wine and say, that wine smells like it's from here. And
And you can do that now, right?
I'm maybe a little rusty right now. Give it a try. You got some Spanish wine.
Do you remember Jason?
No.
Oh, you do remember. He used to come by all the
An
time.
amazing guy.
He's a big Hawaiian guy, man, but full of love, man. Like Randy, full of love, man. A little more local than Randy. Randy was kind of like a little...
Townie.
Yeah, he was a townie, whereas Jason Panui was
Country
like
boy.
a country boy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away too, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Good, awesome guy. But it made me, it had an impact on me because I thought, well, that's craft right there, right? That's someone who's got their nose in this glass, and and we've already probably tasted 100 wine or something like that, and he's tasting that, going, yeah, I think this wine's from here, and I thought that that's real. And I hadn't tasted a whole lot blind tasting, a little bit, and I just was very impressed with that. And I thought, one day I want to be able to do that, and it kind of inspired me to do some work, put some work in, and study and commit to tasting, and it was super cool.
You mentioned to me that for Thanksgiving, you had a bottle of Beaujolais. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Why Beaujolais?
Well, I love it. Number one, I guess that's why. I just bought some from Kermit Lynch, so I had a bunch, and number two, and I think it's great wine with the food we were having too.
With turkey and all that.
Yeah, and
Turkey ham. Yeah.
Turkey's the least fun part of that meal for me.
Really?
Yeah.
What is your favorite part of a Thanksgiving meal?
Stuffing, gravy, cranberry. Take those three, the rest can just
Yeah.
stay home. But we did have turkey. It turned out good.
You
And
roasted it?
roasted it, yeah. On the Weber grill. So it was Weber squared, that turkey.
To me, the ham is the least interesting. I'm not a big ham guy.
I like it sliced
But
thinly
you are
on
a
a
ham.
sandwich.
So, Mike, you're the director of operations for the Roy's restaurant, which
Yep.
was a huge pioneer in terms of wine and food programs. any insights into perhaps what kind of wines you think works with Asian foods or Eurasian foods, Asian-inspired foods, let's say?
A low alcohol, low oak for sure, starting with that right there. And then the sky's kind of the limit, and you do your work and figure out what's good, but keep the alcohol low, keep the oak low, and there's a lot of opportunity out there to find some great wines with our food.
Why keep the alcohol and the oak low?
I think Asian food, kind of salty,
Sometimes sweet.
Yeah.
Spicy, perhaps.
And I think generally speaking, the more maybe like nuanced or the food is, or the more chances that extra oak's going to conflict with something in the food too. So generally speaking, I'm looking for lower oak or low alcohol, but especially with Asian influence food.
Hey, Cully, do you mind if I switch myself out right now? Because I would like to give the opportunity to Ariana.
No, I'm going to switch myself out and you three talk story.
Come on, Ariana.
Yeah, please.
I want your generation to ask questions to an icon like Mike Weber. You come take my place.
No. So we'll take a break right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned. So, welcome back. We swapped out Cully, and we brought in Ariana Suchita, the Gram Sam. I think it's very
From
important
the bench.
time. The relief pitcher. So,
On the off
southpaw. So, I think it's really important. I was talking to Michael before we started filming this thing. I think it's a really important time for the older generation to share insights and hopefully say some things that may inspire younger generations or viewers or regular people that just want to enjoy wines to, jump on the bandwagon and have some fun along the way. Nothing serious, nothing. So I think it's important that Cully asks some questions, but I also would like to hear some of Ariana's questions, if you don't mind, just to, she's going to provide a lot of different insights.
Thanks. Well, I was really getting inspired just sitting in the corner there, drinking my wine and listening to everything. Chuck brought up a great point. You manage not one, but 10 different overseeing restaurants. Each of those restaurants has their own personality. And within those, you have so many different personalities of people from back of the house, front of the house. How do you manage all those different types of personalities and kind of get them to work together to a common goal?
I got a lot of help there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely more than just me managing those restaurants. There's Roy, he's heavily involved for sure, and Gerard Butler, our corporate chef, and a number of other people too that assist with that. But I think that one of the things that it teaches you and it has taught me is I came from, before I started doing multi-unit management, I was a general manager, and I had a style that was very effective for me, but it was pretty firm style, right? And it was kind of my way or the highway style. And if you're there every day, that can work. I don't look back now and say that probably wasn't the best way, but that can work. But if you're not there every day, if you're popping in once a week or once every 2 weeks, that style doesn't work at all because you can't control everything. You have to. People are going to do what they're going to do, and you have to find a new way. And I think that was one of the big lessons for me was, you just can't muscle through everything. You have to learn nuance and understand how to treat people in a way that makes them want to be there and participate and find out what's unique about them and what's gonna get them to be part of the culture that you think's gonna make things be effective.
That's awesome. Do you think that it's important? So when you have all these different types of restaurants, how do you also have a common culture or theme throughout all the different ones? So if I go to Roy's Hawaii Kai, I can feel like if I go to a different Roy's restaurant, there's still that standard of quality. How do you keep that consistent?
Well, you focus on quality with, maybe specified quality, is kind of the focus without being too specific there, across different types of concepts. But there are things that are universal, right? Teamwork, right? You focus while you're there for the guests, right?
Yeah.
We're going to do that together. This is a restaurant. We're going to all work with a restaurant pace. One person's busy, we're all busy. All these kind of things. Like chickens can just saying this. Those kind of things you focus on, and then you really focus on your leadership, and you say, hey, what's important about leadership? What does that mean to you? And talk about that kind of thing. And
Do you have aha moments with leadership? I know we talk about aha wines all the times and things like that. Do you have anything that either you learned or when you feel like, oh, I got this?
I feel like you can't be a good leader without being a good follower. You have to understand what that's about first.
Mm-hmm.
And so that starts there. And then if you understand how to be a good follower, and then you have a chance at being a good leader, but you might not be one yet. And, Reiner Kuhnbrock, my guy who hired me at Royce.
Oh, wow.
He had this thing. Hey, Mike, what's the one thing that a leader needs? I'm like, one thing. Oh, well, let me see. Commitment, hard work, attention to detail. He's like, no, followers. And I was like,
True.
Oh, good one. That resonates with me still, right? People got to want to follow you. Otherwise, you got to figure that out. You can, it's people got to want to be there because when you're gone,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to do something. They're going to make some decisions. So if
There's a level of trust too that has to be there then.
they got to trust you. Yeah, absolutely. And you got to earn that.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. It's super nuanced. You know what I mean? It's not, you think about, when I was a younger person, I think, I'm going to get this book and learn how to do this and get this book and learn how to do that. Well, I spend a lot of time buying books, learn how to do them. Just go do it, and you and keep after it, and you figure it out. But it's nuanced, right? You have to have that experience of understanding that how to handle this situation.
Mm-hmm.
There is no obvious answer. Every situation is totally unique.
Yeah. And then when you first actually went to the lodge, was that moving from quantity, like doing high volume stuff, to more finesse, or were you already doing kind of fine dining?
I had worked at a fine dining place before Coeli, but the jobs right before Coeli were not particularly fine dining places. They were more casual, more volume kind of places. But I had that in my background. That was at Mario's place.
Oh, wow.
Shout out to those guys, the Pelagi family. But you'd been there or you sent somebody there. I can't remember what it was in Riverside, California. But that was a place that taught me about, it was the matriarch of the family ran the business, and the boys were my age. We all went to high school together. But the matriarch was this artisan lady who spent all this time in Italy, and she was an amazingly unique woman. And
she was managing the front?
Her sons and her, it was a family restaurant, kind of ran it, and she was the mom. So they were all strong-minded people, but she was running the show for the most part, and she was definitely running certain niches, and she had a style about her, but she taught me about quality, right? That was the first time that I really got focused on somebody who was really specific about quality, and certain napkin folds and how they're done right. And you look at it initially, you'd be like, they look exactly the same, right? There's no difference between that one and that one. But she's very specific. Now look, and she was an artist.
And there was a reason behind it. It wasn't just, because I saw it this way. Yeah.
My first real exposure to commitment to quality in what we do, and how just being unrelenting about it.
I think Lodge Coeli was really about aloha service. It wasn't necessarily pinpoint. It was just about making sure the customer felt like they were having a fine experience here in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Coeli did it like nobody else, I think. I thought it was very warming, welcoming.
With that being said, for the future...
It was fine. I'm not saying it wasn't fine.
No,
but I'm just saying their emphasis was really on...
the hospitality, the warmth, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
With that being said, what do you think, for both of you, the future is in terms of Hawaii restaurant hospitality? How do we move post-pandemic and look into, is it going to be fine dining? What's important? What do we need to get back to the roots about?
Well, hospitality, obviously the obvious answer is hospitality, and just stay focused on that. And, everyone's going to have their niche, right? A few people who have passion for doing fine dining are going to do it. And those diners that want to go enjoy that are going to do it. And you find your passion and go just pursue hospitality in your way, I think. And as long as we all work together, I think, I overheard someone say it a couple weeks ago about, let's just, we're good at it already here in Hawaii. We look out for each other and we work together to get things done. So let's keep doing that. Let's not try and screw each other over. Let's work together and get things back going as best as we can get them going, and work at what we're good at, support each other, and take care of guests, To me, there's no secrets, right? Just go to work doing what we do.
Just do the love and make sure that you're putting love back into it, right?
Absolutely.
Mike, so What was the year that we met up in Paso Robles, roughly?
Oh, 99.
You think it was that late?
It was 99 or 98 for sure.
Yeah, okay. So I had this idea about doing something in California, and then Roy and Alan, DK, Chai, I mean, of course it's Roy that's the leader of the whole bunch, So, he thought during these times we were in a lull of tourism here in Hawaii. So we decided to do a taste of Hawaii in Paso Robles, California.
Oh, in Paso.
And,
wow.
and the reason why we did that was Paso was located roughly halfway between San Francisco and LA. And then we invited all the small hand-sailed travel agents, not big ones, up and down between Paso and LA, Paso and San Francisco, so that they would experience Hawaii culinarily.
Yeah.
And hopefully they would recommend us so that to, hand sell to people and people would come to Hawaii again. We just wanted to remind everybody, hi, aloha, we're here,
We're here. Yeah.
So Mike Weber came.
Oh, okay.
So we had Roy, Alan Wong, DK, Chai. We had Dean Okimoto from Nalo Farms, and we had John Langenstein from, he was the finest Kona coffee grower at that time that I knew of. His coffees were excellent. They were all hand milled, hand roasted, all that stuff, at high elevation grown and all that stuff. So,
and you guys just hopped on a bus up there?
A plane, yeah.
Plane?
And we had two vans.
Vans.
It was a trip.
Did you drive? Oh, literally a trip.
No, it was a trip, man. It was a wild trip, because I shouldn't say all this stuff, but the flight attendants gave us all the some
little bottles
vodka. So the drive is 3.5 hours. So you can hear all the because all the bottles were on the floor, and whatnot. It was a really cool trip. It was a great bonding experience. Do you remember that?
Well, I do remember that. I didn't travel with you guys. I was there for my brother's wedding, so I just came up and joined you.
Nice.
Right.
So I wasn't part of the vodka experience. But
you show up and you're like, what are you guys doing?
But my question was just, that was your first time really to Paso Robles wine country, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what did you walk away, or what did you see there that you thought, wow?
Those chefs from Hawaii really drink a lot. I think I remember number one. That was my first standout moment. That I was only up there for a short period of time, and you and I traveled with you on a different trip a year later that I got much more insight to than that. Other than the fact that what's Justin's last name? Smith.
Baldwin.
Oh,
Justin Smith from Saxum.
Yeah.
Saxum.
Yeah.
Smith.
I don't think I had met him then yet, but
you must have met him in '99.
Yeah, that was
or the following year when I went with you because we stopped by to see him.
He was pretty impactful.
So you guys did 2 trips to Paso.
Well, one trip was with the chefs.
Okay.
And we just did a luncheon with a cooking demo, and we did a dinner.
Okay.
And it was at Justin Winery and Vineyards.
Oh, okay.
And which was the winery of that appellation at that time, and it was on the western part, and it was really narrow roads at night, no lights, and deers could just come running out. I mean, it was very remote. It's a really crazy time.
Oh, wow.
And then the second time, what I used to do was I used to go to California once or twice or 3 times a year, and I would just take a van and I would just go. And I would just go walk vineyards with people or taste wines or whatever, just so I could see what's happening. So there was a few years there in a row that we had like 2 or 3 vans. And Mike Weber and Mark Shishito and Jason Panui and Randy Ching, all these guys would just jump along and go
road trip.
Yeah. A wine trek, And
super aggressive schedule. Chuck was a
of course
slave driver. Man.
So we would go all the way from Anderson Valley up north. We'd go all the way down to Santa Barbara. So you're talking about at least a 10 and a half hour drive.
No potty breaks.
Oh, we would just, we roughed it. Right. We just roughed it. So what would you, that was really your first insight into going to wine country in California, huh?
Yeah, that trip kind of more stood out for me. We saw on that trip Fred Scherer.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And he was one of those moments for me. It was pretty cool because someone asked him, we're tasting wine. First of all, he's pulling corks with his Swiss Army knife with a little teeny corkscrew, and there's no lever, no lever on it. So it's like the country boy winemakers all do it the same thing. They put the bottle between their legs,
boom.
pull that thing like that. That's what the country boys do up there in Sonoma. But someone asked him, "Hey, what were you going for when you were, with this wine?" And you could tell that the question just, I wouldn't say it bugged him necessarily.
Yeah,
but
he's like, what?
He didn't like that question. What was I going for? And he didn't have an answer. And finally, he's like, this, I guess. But it kind of got me to think about, he's not trying to make wine, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to ease it along a process, maybe, or something. Is kind of my takeaway from that. But this idea of,
It's not what he wants it to be. What does the wine want to be, kind of
exactly.
thing. Oh, that's super
Exactly.
cool. That's so Fred too, right?
yeah.
Because he's a vineyard guy. He's
Right.
a let it be kind of guy. That's cool.
That always stuck with me. I was like, he's not trying to make it into anything, right?
Was there anybody else that really?
Oh, there's so many, too many to even mention. There's so many stops on that thing.
Well, that's a huge trek from Anderson all the way down. That's a lot.
And then you also went on a trip with the Kermit people one time, didn't you?
Yep,
Oh, wow.
I did.
So that was
So
like
that was
2
France.
weeks long,
Yeah.
and you went all over France.
So I had an opportunity to split the trip with Roberto.
Oh, okay.
He did the
Burgundy
part
trip.
of the trip, Champagne and Burgundy, and which was fine with me actually because I'm more into these country
Yeah, the
wines.
rustic, yeah.
Right, way more my style. And that was really amazing. My big takeaway on that trip was really a relationship actually, and that's Bruce Nyers.
Oh, wow.
Even though I enjoyed the experience a ton, it was really kind of seeing, Bruce's pace and his professionalism, and he's
Yeah. Does he pack the schedule full too? Is he like Chuck?
It's full. It's full for sure. And he's an early riser, and he walks every morning. One of my fond memories. Maybe it's a shame it's not about France particularly. It's about a guy from California or Delaware, wherever he's
No,
from.
that's important.
But he invited me. Maybe I was up eating breakfast one morning in the hotel, so he said, "Hey," he'd just gotten back from his walk. He goes, "If you get up early, go for a walk with me." So we walked through. I don't know if the town's name is Bordeaux or not, but we were in the Bordeaux, region.
Yeah, there is a town.
Oh, so I don't know if we're staying in that town or not, but it was in that area.
Yeah.
And we walked this town pre-dawn in the morning, and it's little French hamlet kind of a place, and it's just really,
Picturesque,
It wasn't
right?
Saint-Emilion. He usually stays in Saint-Emilion.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But it was a unique experience and a pretty special one to me, and I will always appreciate Bruce for inviting me on that walk with him. I haven't talked to him about that in a long time. But overall,
That's such a special moment, though.
it
You know.
was super cool.
But why? What made Bruce so special to you? So memorable?
He's committed to his craft, right? And he's just good at what he does for sure, and that's that to me is admirable.
But are you talking about the Kermit Lynch wines, or are you talking about the Nyers wines?
Well, I was talking about
Him as a professional wine. Yeah.
I was talking about his sales,
Yeah.
kind of how he managed that trip, how he does his sales for Kermit Lynch, and also I think he's a great communicator about what he has for sale and the great qualities of those things. He's really very, very good at that, and I appreciate that. And I can tell you right now, my wine cooler at home is full of Nyers wines. I love what he does, what they do, what he and Tadeo do. I'm a huge fan of that.
Do you know she staged there?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're amazing people. So for me to hear that story, and I think about, wow, where else could Bruce be more in his element than walking through the streets of France with you sharing insight before everybody else gets up, right? Like that's super, super awesome.
Guarantee doesn't even remember that. He goes on that was going on that trip.
But that's
twice.
kind
I
of
bet you-
beautiful about it,
Kelly,
though.
don't you think Bruce would remember something like that?
Oh yeah.
Bruce remembers everything, bro.
Wow.
He remembers the date. He remembers the time. Everything, man.
That was an amazing week for me for sure, and some a lot of great takeaways. That one stands out because we all know Bruce, right? And but the wines I love from him right now are those Carignan wines.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I am so in love with those things.
Both Sage Canyon and the
Sage
Carignan.
Canyon.
Sage
and the
Canyon's
Carignan.
unreal. Yeah.
Okay, so for the viewer, explain Sage Canyon.
So I think we actually did do an episode where we talked about Carignan, and it's kind of fitting in.
Carignan's a great variety.
Carignan's a great varietal, and it's inspired from, Bruce, obviously his trips to France, but primarily south of France, having this spicy, black peppery type of Carignan that it's not as big and bold as a Cabernet, and it's not as light and elegant as a Pinot. It fits almost perfectly in the middle. So when you're thinking about things that maybe aren't as popular, but this is a varietal that we should be championing. That for me is especially what they're doing in California. Hey, let's bring this to the new world and do it right. That's for me, Sage Canyon, especially just their idea of the varietal or what it can be too.
And what do you have to say about Nayar's Carignan or Carignan?
Well, I was just thinking that I think if I was, it's my last meal, I'm going to the gallows.
Yeah.
I get a glass of wine. I think it's going to be Sage Canyon.
That's
Really?
awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
it's
Savory. It's,
it just hits it for me. It's just delicious.
So, just so we're clear, not all Carignan is created the same. Mm-hmm. So what makes Bruce's so special, same thing the ones that he used to represent from Kermit Lynch, where he kind of got the idea, Maxime Magnon, Leon Barral, Vinci, Domaine Fonsaint.
I just learned about Burrell, so sorry, I didn't know about Burrell
I thought
earlier.
everybody knew. Okay,
I know
girl?
he's talking to me. I'm like, sorry, I need a Kermit
But the
Lynch.
point I'm trying
Google
to say
this.
is that what
We
makes
saw him on my French trip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See now I
want to go back to that so you can provide insight to her. But let me say this. Let me finish this thought. Old vine Carignan is very different from young vine Carignan, and Carignan grown in different kind of soils, whether schist, limestone, or sand, can create very, very unique types of Carignan. So Carignan at its best for me is old vine Carignan, because Carignan doesn't have as much flavor, as much character typically as Syrah or Grenache or the other Mourvèdre, the other grapes that you see down there. It's more of a blending grape, giving it flesh, giving it acid, some tannin or something. But so old vine Carignan that's grown in interesting soils, that's the specialty of producers like Maxime Magnon, Leon Barral, etc. So when Bruce brought that concept to America, then he had to look for old vine Carignan. So that's why his Carignan is Evangelo Vineyard, which was those vines must be like 140 years old.
Wow.
And because it's planted in sand, it's own rooted. It's still on its own roots. It's not grafted on anything. So understand when he says Nayar's Carignan, that's just not like the other Carignans out of California. It's something very special and unique because it starts with the vineyard and the age of the vines and all that stuff, and then Bruce and Tadeo, then they foot stomp it to
That's right.
to do less pressure. It doesn't
forgot
squish
about
the
that.
grapes
TLC
and stuff.
there, yeah.
It's wild yeast fermented and stuff. So it's a very different take on Carignan. Some of the viewers might go out and buy Carignan and they'll be disappointed. Please understand, I just want to make sure it's clear that the Sage Canyon and the Carignan Evangelo Vineyard, both from Nayar's, is a very different take on what Carignan can be.
Very specific vision.
So I'd like to then segue to, unless you want to comment on that.
Nope.
Okay, I'd like to segue then to Leon Barral. You visited him. What are your thoughts to share with Ariana? 'Cause
I was Googling earlier today, Burrell.
All right. Well, so I'm not the best person to provide details. I think Chuck will tell you I don't have a photographic memory, but the experience to me was there wood, right? I thought about he's into some wood for sure. He's a unique character.
Is his personality kind of eccentric? Or?
Yeah, I'd say
he's a renegade.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'd say he definitely
Sometimes their wines are kind of reflective of the people. That's why. Yeah.
he definitely had a unique personality and I the kind of person that I like. He didn't seem like he was there didn't feel like he was there to impress anybody, right? He just gonna do his thing and I enjoyed that. I don't have a whole lot of experience with those wines. I don't know a whole lot about them.
But his if you look at his employee roster, it's like 7 sheep, 2 cows. Seriously, if you look on this
That's
thing,
not what's for dinner? That's
oh, I'm sure later on when they're not pulling their weight, they're for dinner.
Oh, okay.
Especially the sheep, because
weakest
that
links.
would be so bad.
I haven't tried those wines in a long time.
Yeah, they're really good. But the point I'm trying to say is that he believes in a living vineyard. Just like Maxime Magnon and Vinci, they believe in living vineyard, not tilling and not all these things, cover crops. They take a very more natural minded approach to it all, more less invasive.
That's so cool that you could actually go and see these people, because this is like their philosophy, but it's not like what people just like, oh, let's talk about what I'm doing. You actually see this is what they're doing with their vineyards. That's really, really neat.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience for me. You mentioned Maxime Magnon. Now, those wines I've had quite a bit recently. And
Oh, nice.
how do those wines compare to Leon Barral and Maxime Magnon?
Well, he does whole berry and he does some carbonic, as a matter of fact. So his wines to me are fresher, juicier. They're, but if you were to ask Bruce is all
Loves
in.
Magnon,
He
right?
loves
Yeah.
Magnon. If he could only buy one wine from southern France, I think it would be Grand Sterpere and Maxime Magnon would be at the head, and I think Tempier and Barral would be in there too. I mean, for him those are iconic. So for Bruce to feel that way, every time you see him, when he sees a bottle of Maxime Magnon, he like, he loves those wines. man.
Right.
That's a head turner. Oh, well, for anyone, I think, especially nowadays, right? They're getting harder and harder to find, I feel like. But
So the wine we're talking about, the producer's name is Maxime Magnon, and those wines are available. I saw them. The only place I've seen them is at Artfield Kylo. Again, I'm not trying to promote a store. It's just, I go about looking to these things because I'm hoping more and more people go to buy that wine because he deserves to have a voice in the marketplace, And I saw a bottle of Barral at Artfield Kylo, and I saw a bottle at Brick and
Stones?
Stones.
Brick and Stones.
Yeah. Is it
Bricks
with-
and Stones.
Bricks and Stones. Rick Lilly is starting a little retail kind of thing, and he has some Leon Barral Fougère there for sale.
Noted. So I need to go on a shopping trip later after this.
Where is that? Brixton.
So it's in Kaka'ako, and it's just this. You have to look it up. It's on.
Yeah.
It's something that I don't know if they're fully started yet, but it's more of a.
Tying in cigars as well, which
You
is
have to
really
make an
cool.
appointment, and he sits down and consults with you. on-
Cool.
So Rick is the guy from 12th Avenue Grill. Yeah.
Awesome guy.
So any other questions for Mike?
Yeah, well, something that we've been chatting about on and off the podcast, and I think you would tie in great with it, is we're all dying to travel again after this pandemic. And now that you mentioned you went on some really cool wine trips, where in the world would you travel to a wine region if you could right now?
Would love to go to Beaujolais for sure.
Beaujolais? Yeah.
I've never been. I would like to go. That
Was that because Roberto sniped that one part of the trip
right,
from
you
you?
got that. I never got to go. I think to me there's something about I don't know, maybe the humbleness of those wines. Yeah, not to say that they aren't of amazing quality, but there's something about them that attracts me. Not a lot of pomp and circumstance, which kind of turns me off typically about certain things. So that is somewhere where I would love to go.
Is there a favorite producer? Producers?
I'm into Foillard right now.
Oh, yeah.
Go
So-
to P.
Yeah, I got some of that at home right now. In fact, I had some of that for Thanksgiving too.
Nice.
You know what? I had an interesting kind of thing happen the other night. So there's let me see, a producer, a Chablis producer who's pretty famous, and I had a expression, like an old vine expression from them, and I had a Grand Cru expression from them, and I so much preferred the old vine expression.
Oh, wow.
I felt like the Grand Cru expression, it was just too much. It was really interesting to me that happened to me recently, so it's kind of sticking in my head right now.
That was Thanksgiving too. You had a bottle of Chablis. Yeah.
And the night before, I'd had the old vine expression, and I enjoyed that much more. It just popped into my head right
Well,
now.
when you're talking about Beaujolais, something humble, right? Like the old vines, just something they're not trying to be anything they're not, and probably a lot less new oak or something than I'm assuming on maybe the Grand Cru could have had, but just the vineyards doing their thing kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, I
That's
think
cool.
in all fairness, when you're a producer, if you get 95 points and up, you don't have to go on sales trips. People contact you for the wines. So that coupled with the warming of the planet and better vine material, better growing methodology in the vineyard, and better winemaking and smarter winemaking and whatnot, you get wines that are kind of beefed up. And so I keep using the phrase, it's like declassified Auslese today.
Oh, yeah.
They're so ripe,
The body, yeah.
and especially if you're talking about Grand Cru, because you want to sell that bottle for X amount of dollars,
Right.
financially, because you only have such a small holding. You're thrilled if you can sell off all at this price.
Yeah.
So naturally, those wines are going to be. Plus, that they don't want to in a rating on Robert Parker, the Wine Spectator. They don't want to be the caboose
Right,
in terms of the rating.
Everyone's
you know?
slowly
Gotta
going
get up
up.
there.
So I think all of these factors, that's why, like even for me, it's not like even with Maxime Magnon, I don't buy the Campagna.
Yeah.
I buy the Demerante, the entry
entry
level.
level.
I prefer that Foyard.
Well, it
And I
works
like
with
the
your
Beaujolais
restaurant's
Village.
food, too. Yeah.
I prefer those because they're better priced and they're lighter, more delicious to me.
And my comments weren't about the quality of the wine by any means. More of my personal preference right now. And even like this wine that we're having right now that you said was $14. I love this wine. Right?
Yeah.
This is like right up my alley. And it's just really just kind of what I look for in a wine. And it's a lighter, it's
approachable
easy
right out of the
drinking.
bottle. Yeah. I
Well,
love that.
I think it's getting harder and harder to find good values. You go to the stores and everything, and there's a lot of commercial stuff out there, recognizable stuff, and I don't know what else kind of stuff. But to find, this was family owned until just a few years ago. Campari bought them just a few years ago, but for the longest time, for generations, this was family owned estate, one of the largest, not only in Sardinia but in Italy, privately owned estates. So only recently, in the past X amount of years, did Campari buy them.
Yeah.
So to find, it's like we talk about Ancient Peaks all the time. To find these projects that are family owned and operated, and it's a special vineyard. They have like Ancient Peaks has 5 different soil types. These guys have so much land. They have all different kinds of soils.
Yeah.
And then to find that they make the wines delicious and balanced and seamless.
Also
and,
passed down through family tradition.
And I think at a fair price. Those are the ones that are getting harder and harder to find. All the popular priced ones, the lower reasonable priced ones, they're all mixed with purchased grapes, et cetera, for the most part. I see them in the stores. So that I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but to find estate grown is a whole nother ballgame to me today.
Well, I would say to our viewers, obviously if they're tuning in to us, they must like wine at least a little bit. But, here's 2 people in front of me that have actually gone on the pursuit. Maybe it's not the easiest. I'm just going to buy anything off the shelf. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to find good bottles, but damn, it's worth it, huh?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
And maybe next year we can travel, right, Cully? So we'll all go to Sardinia and Beaujolais and maybe Chablis.
I would love to go to Sardinia.
Yeah.
Also, Corsica, too. I'd love to go to Corsica.
Cully's like,
That's
sign
fun.
us all up. Let's go. Chuck Furuya Uncorked wine trip.
Mike, I appreciate you coming down, bro.
Thanks for having me. It's
Thank
been
you so much.
Thank you very
This
much
was
for,
awesome.
for coming.
Thank you.
I have to call and make an appointment to see him nowadays. There was a time when it was a little different, but now I have
So
to
not
call and make an
true.
appointment. Like, please, Mike, please,
Oh, my
please, I'm
God.
begging you.
Okay,
So,
okay.
To all of you, our very special guests, Mike Weber, Director of Operations of
Yeah.
Roy's Restaurant, Ariana Suchita, the Gram Sam from the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. And next week will be another one, or 2 weeks from now will be another interview. Tune in then and join us again. Aloha.
Mahalo,
Bye.
everyone.
See ya.